I'm going to show you how I built this Murphy bed. It comes as a kit from Rockler. So the nice thing is it's all the hardware, the metal, and then like some wooden slats for it. So you can make whatever frame you want. They have some basic plans. So it's nice. I've seen actually some people put them in like a garage and so you can just use plywood. This is going in a room, so I did plywood, but then veneered it and made it look a lot nicer. Has some custom handles here like that. So it's really up to you what you do. And again, this is maybe some better views here. I've got to open this up and that's how the legs hit. So I'll go through how I built it. I'll put it in here. Again, you can get, this is the horizontal version. You can get there's a vertical version. This one worked a little bit better for us. We got a small room here. But again, I'll go through, just kind of show you everything I built, staining it, putting on the veneer, making these panels on here. And you can, repeat it if you want to. You can, customize it. I've seen a lot of people put shelves on it. So it's really up to you. It's just the basic framework. This is how I received the box from Rockler. I was a little worried the box was a little damaged, but turned out it was fine, no problems. Everything was in there, all the parts I needed. It's a pretty heavy box, so you have to deal with that. But I started working on the frame, laying it out, the metal frame. That's the part that's a little bit more intensive. It's not hard, but it has it all laid out, how to hook it all together, and it's all just screws and metal pieces. So I worked on that and then just kind of laid it out. This is where I'm going to put it against this wall, and if you can tell, but this is a pretty small room here, so that's why if we had a queen size bed, it would pretty much take up the whole room. So that's why I'm putting a Murphy bed in here. So again, looking through the instructions, I would pull it out, just make sure I have everything. That's like the hinges. You can see all the screws are all laid out, labeled really nicely. The manual is really straightforward. It gives you cut for the wood. Everything's needed just to do it. You just kind of figure out what you want the outside frame to be. So again, they give you the minimum specs, but it's just putting together the metal part. It really isn't that difficult. So I started working on, you can see it was cold when I started. It was winter. Is cutting out the panels of what the frame of the bed's going to be. It would be nice to do it in hardwood, but this is just such huge panels, a huge piece of wood. You'd really be dealing with wood movement, so it's a lot easier to just build it out of plywood, which is much more stable. And then I veneered it with a white oak, and then finished it like that. So it's really just cutting it. Use the domino here just so I would line it up easy. So I'm really just making the panels right now, so you'll kind of see it as I start putting it together. This is the top panel, I believe. So it has one piece that goes on the top and the bottom, kind of L-shaped, and then there's side panels. So really, building a box is basically it's one of the easiest things to do. I just sanded just to make it soft. This is actually a finished veneer on the hardwood. It's actually a oak, so I'm just using that as a beginning for the inside. For the outside, I'm going to do a little nicer oak on it. So again, I'm just building just making sure it's square here before I finish it. It gets pretty good structure once it's put together, once you have it all together and held in pieces. But here I'm just using the dowels again to line it up. Some glue just to kind of give them a little bit of strength, and I'm going to put some screws through there. As I mentioned, I'm veneering it, so it doesn't really matter. If I have those screw holes, I'll go back and finish them up later. So, and this is the top piece. So it's a little difficult working with these huge pieces like this. So I had to take it inside. I'm actually going to half build it in here, and then I have to take up the stairs. So I'm going to finish it, but I just wanted to square up the pieces. So the piece I was working at was the one that's closest there, that L shape, so that sits. So it's laying down right now, but it's going to be going up against the wall like that. So again, I'm just measuring it, make sure it's square here. I'm going to pre-drill the holes and make sure I have it right. Looking at, I had a PDF of the instructions, so I just wanted to double check it before I got everything. So again, I'm going to be just pre-drilling holes here for the screws, getting it all ready, because you can see the room is so small, there was no way I was going to be able to take it up those stairs, get it through the corner, around that corner, put it in here. So since I pre-drilled it, I have everything lined up, the dowels. All I have to do is glue it and then screw it into place. So it's upside down right now, but I did it this way so that I could just tip it up and then it'll go right against the wall. So again, I'm making sure I have all my pieces laid out correctly. So you can see, I mean, it's not difficult. You're just building, like I said, a big box, but it's just such large pieces and trying to keep them squared. So I got it up, and then the first thing to do is put the hinges on. I call them hinges, but it's really what the bed frame is going to pivot on, and then you put the pistons on them. Actually messed up my measuring, and it's hitting on the top because I measured it from the bottom before the bottom 3/4 was on there, and so everything was off by 3/4. So dumb mistake starting off. But anyways, fixed it with a little magic editing here. Put my hinges down 3/4 inch, and now it's working. So it doesn't have a stop on there, but I've just got that working. So you can see here's how it hinges on one piece, and then there's a lot of screws to put in there, and then the pistons will eventually hold that in place. So I use some of the blue tape just to kind of get my idea where to do it, so I'm not having to write on the wood and scratch it off, make a mess of it, because this is going to be finished, which you can see. But you can see how many holes are on there. And here you can see where all the screws are, where I screwed it all together. But again, it was off a little bit like that, so I'm going to go ahead and just use a trim router and then just flatten it out just so it looks a little bit nicer. Because again, I'm veneering all this, so all this will be covered up, but any bumps or anything would show through. And then the next thing you need to do is this has to sit flush against the wall because you got to screw it. So any molding on there, so I have baseboard and I had some quarter round, so that all came off. So just get that off and then have to go back later on. I'm trying not to damage the wall, even though it really won't be seen here, but just trying to be overly cautious. So I just need to get this off, and then it'll sit flush against there. So now you see it's going to sit flush. And then I got to find the studs behind it, because those big panels that are sitting against the wall is what you screw into the wall. Because this thing, it takes a lot of weight, it takes a lot of force to pull that down. So it's going to needs to be really strong against the wall. So I'm using some shims right here as well, just to make sure it stays flat, because the floor is not perfect. And then those markings that I put on the blue tape on the wall, just transfer those to the panels, and then they're going to throw some lag bolts through there. So again, it comes with all these. You can hit as many studs as you want. I think they say 2 studs. I was able to hit 3 here, so it's definitely not going to go anywhere. And then between that and the screws and the glue and the dowels and everything, it's going to be fine. So you put the top and the bottom. I'm just screwing that in again, and it's using the blue tape as well to mark it, but also to keep it from blowing out any of the veneer part on the wood. And then I'm going to use the level, because this thing's so large it was actually bending a little bit. So I found how I torque some of the screws, it actually bent it back into square. It was just a function of having such a large panel. So again, I'm just making sure it's square here everywhere. So once that large panel goes up, it's not, I can have a little bit easier time keeping it visible flush. So I'm measuring just every angle I could think of to make it sure it's flat, because these panels are so big and the bed's so big, I think any little bit that goes off is going to throw it off a little bit. So here I'm going to start off veneering the top. I had this really thin kind of paper veneer. I'm having to lay it out. So I'm going to do the top and the outside with this. I really didn't like it. This is my first time using it. I've always done the gluing down veneer. But since I had to build it in here, so I'm having to use a seal coat first just to kind of seal the wood. That's what that mentioned that this paperback veneer needs. So I'm doing that. I'm going to tape the edges anywhere. So since it's plywood, I'm putting this veneer edge banding on there so that you can cover up anything where you can see the plywood, just to make it look nicer. So I'm working on that. It's my first time actually edge banding. It's really not that difficult. You just take an iron, put it on. You want a little bit of overhang so that you can trim it back versus not having enough, and you would see pieces of the plywood or the edging. And then you use this. It's a trimming tool, so you don't have to get it perfect, but it's enough just to trim it. And then I found was just sanding it and giving it a little bit of a round over like this. Gives it a nice finish look to it. I said I'm building it inside here because I have to, because I just can't fit it in here. So I was worried about using contact cement and regular veneer. So here's what it looks like. So that's why I went with this paper veneer, but I didn't really like it. It's a little more difficult to work with. You can see it kind of moves everywhere, but it's just like anything else. You can pick kind of what you like, but this is quarter sawn white oak. So you can see I saw the tips where you can, if you iron it a little bit, it helps the glue stick a little bit better. I'm not really sure. I was doing that, so I'm using the roller just to kind of start it off. One thing I definitely read, is that if you want to get a really good contact of it, is get a board like that, have it rounded a little bit so that it's not so square and you're scratching it, but then use that with a lot of force, because it takes quite a bit of force for that contact cement to glue down. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to go back to the router here with a flush trim bit, and then just trim off the edges to make that veneer right up against the edge. And you can see the wood that's facing us, that still has, you can still see the plywood striations in there, so I'm going to come back and put some of the edge banding on that as well. But I wanted to finish this first, get all the veneering done, so that you can see it right there. But this is flushed down nice. I trimmed it off with a little bit of sandpaper a little bit later on, but now I'm going to go back and then do the edge banding so you don't see that again, that plywood. Obviously that would be pretty ugly if I had that. And then I went down the other side, so you can see this nice white oak veneer on the sides and along the top, so it makes it look nice. So I actually left the oak pattern on the inside just to kind of get a little bit contrast, but you never see it when it's the bed is closed. And then here I went back and did the edge banding along those last exposed edges along, as you can see on the top there. So now you can't see any, even on the underside there. So now you can't see any more plywood, and it just looks like hardwood because everything's veneered. And so I'm going to finish it. I really like this Danish oil. It's pretty stinky, so I'm having to have it open just because there's a lot of VOCs that it puts off. But it just wipe on, kind of flood it a lot more than if you ever use these other wax veneers that you put on a little bit, or wax coatings that you put on there, like Rubio or anything like that. But so this one you kind of flood it a little bit more than you need to, but it's kind of the same process. You just want to get it in there. You give it like 5 or 10 minutes to soak in, and then you wipe off as much as you can. But again, this is pretty potent stuff, so I'm having to wear a mask, have all the windows open. But I just had to build it in here. I'm just double checking, so I had done a lot of matching of the colors and testing it out just to see what the best combination was. So I mixed the natural with a little bit of a darker, just to get kind of the color I wanted to here. So you can see here, it's all finished off, and now I'm just going in with the dry towels and just wiping off any of the excess. That's what you have to do. And that's the other thing too with this. I like the coloring of it, I like the vibrance of it, but it takes a while. It takes several days for it to completely dry. So I waited. I think I did it like the next day. I got it finished, and then wet, so it's completely dry. It still smells a little bit, but then I started working on the frame back here. So I put the frame back in. Since I had already screwed those holes, that was easy. Again, there's no pistons yet, so it's just laying on there. Once you put the pistons in, it takes a lot more because you're having to kind of fight those things, because they're meant to hold down really heavy mattress. And so again, it's just finishing off. Here's a little plate. Make sure you put that in there. But yeah, those pistons are really strong, and they're meant for the mattress to hold it down. So if you have no mattress on there, they're pretty strong. So that's why I'm kind of waiting to the last minute. So you just put one on here and then one onto the bed. And then once you do that, then everything's a little bit more difficult because you're having to hold it a lot of the time. But these things are held in place really strong. With these, I forgot what it was, like 10 or 12 different screws in there all throughout that frame. You can see, you can't really tell, but I'm sitting on it, just trying to hold it down. Or actually, sorry, I put the piston on there, then I took it off just to make sure it fit. But I found it easier because you have to put these slats. This is what's one nice thing about this Rockler kit, is they have these wooden slats that fit on there, so you don't have to have a box frame. This acts as the box spring, and it gives you a nice, comfortable fit on there. And then the mattress just goes on top, and then you can get more mattress than you would if you had to put a box spring on there. So it's just a lot of repetitive putting that on there, but once you get that on there, it's pretty easy. So at this point, then I'm going to go back and put the pistons on there. I was just framing them to make sure they were correct. But also, like I said, once I actually started doing it a little bit, trying to put those slats on there, and realized it'd be easier to take it off and come back because I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to hold it down. So you can see it's pretty heavy. I realized the first time you got to be really careful you don't get your fingers trapped in there like that. Yeah, I kind of demoed what it would be like, but I found if I kind of pulled it a couple times, it loosened them up just a little bit from the original, and you can see it goes past 90 degrees as well. So I'm gonna have to put a stop in there, and they come with these the foam pieces. So don't throw those away. I actually threw one of them away, but I had just enough that I could kind of use it to help. And so the next piece that goes on is the leg, and this thing, this was pretty hard. Again, there's another one. I think I probably should have taken off the pistons and worked on this, because I'm trying to hold it in place with one hand and then also screw this, the leg in, and then there's a long brace that goes to the other side where the other leg attaches to, and I'm trying to hold it and try to do both of those pieces, and the foam helped. So you can see it's kind of crushing because I've only got one instead of the two, but this is just trying to get this on here. Again, it's probably a lot of this stuff would help with the second person, but I'm always just trying to get things done and doing things by myself. So really just get that frame on there, or the bracket between the two of them. And then one thing I noticed was, I didn't notice it till right now, it's actually hitting the frame, and I'm like, oh great, now I just got it all finished. I'm about to scratch it. Luckily I paid attention and just didn't let it slam closed. So what happened is the leg is just a little bit bent, and it just gets exaggerated. So by pulling it a little bit, I was able to get it back into place, and that's fine. So the last piece now I need to do is the covering, and we had one idea of what we wanted to do. Then it got changed a little bit. So anyways, you got to put these panels in here, and you have to put them in several pieces, just because it's too hard and it's too heavy to put them all up as one. And I'm trying to screw it from the back, and I just couldn't come up with a good way. Again, should have probably just had somebody help me hold it up, but I just squeeze my way in the back there, because what I'm doing is I have it lined up, and there's these brackets that sit on top. Luckily I called a helper, and she came and helped me have a little bit just to hold up so it didn't fall forward, and I was able to sneak back out of my little jail here. So it's held up on there on these little hooks, and then you have to screw through those hooks into the panel, and so it's hard to do. So here I drew where they should sit. These little hooks, you'll see they fit on there, and then they screw down, and that's what you then put the panel on, and then they hang onto the frame of the bed until later on there's a lot more screws to put in. But this gives you just a kind of idea. You can see I have to pull it forward a little bit, and then I'm going to hang that hook on there, and then I could do some little minor adjustments there to get it into the right place before it gets screwed in place. And so it depends on the size of the bed you use, but this one, since it's a queen and it's the horizontal, I had to make 4 of these panels. So it's a little bit more to do. I'm trying to get the edge right and get them square and lined up. So it's not hard. It's just a lot of kind of finicky work just to get a good reveal around the edges. You need a good reveal at the bottom, just because when it swings in, the thickness of the wood, if it's too close to the bottom, it may hit. So I'm having just to work on all those little pieces like that. And so here I'm putting the stop in place. You can see how I'm trying to hold this because the pistons are trying to close at the same time. But this stop is where the bed's going to hit. That's going to keep it at 90 degrees and vertical to the bed. So you have a nice reveal all around instead of going all the way through or all the way in. And so that's what I'm doing, just double checking, get my spacer here, and then work on the reveal. I had to do a little bit of adjustments, but it turned out it was okay after some more, just kind of playing around, working on where the things are screwed down. And then this is where we kind of changed it. So I actually ended up veneering the whole outside of that panel. So I actually ended up gluing 2 of them together. So this is the way it's sitting on the wall, and I'm going across the cuts. I'm going to do a longer video on this just because it's a lot to do here. But I'm just using contact cement and gluing down these veneer onto the panels. And then I actually, I'm just using the roller just to get a good, nice edge. I'm just kind of slowly starting it off here. And then I'm going to eventually use a lot better method of putting it down. And I'm just using the plastic to keep it from gluing down because it's veneer, or it's contact cement on both sides. Yes, I think I'm going to make a much larger video because this was quite a process. Especially, I've never done large panels like this. Veneer, trying to get them together. It actually worked out. I was surprised it was pretty good. So I was able to get the edges lined up like this by using the blue tape on here just to hold it really tight together. This is actually how after I glued the next one, it's got a nice seam there. Once I sanded it off, the extra little bit of runoff of glue, it worked out, or it looked nice. As here, I'm pulling it apart. So again, so you see, I have 4 panels. I've glued 2 of them together on each side, so I'd have 2 big ones, and then put the panels. You can see those the veneer across the other way of it, and then used a knife and just cut it down the edge just it's so thin you can easily cut it. And then I go back with the flush trim router here, and then get the edges off. And then so you can imagine, then I have to, since those edges are visible, I have to edge band those as well. But it's just I put those hooks on there, laid it in, got all 4 of them together on here, and then this is the screws from the back of it. So you just have to screw it in place. They were already lined up, so I had to do that. And so once I had that, the last thing to do was put on the handles. So I had these handles I made. I just kind of custom handles. I just kind of cut them out of wood. They were pretty easy to make. So I've been using that nylon strap there just temporarily till I had these, but I just used the tape just to get the holes where I needed to. Those handles have metal screws inside of them, so that I can just put the screw through into those insets. So that's all I'm doing is just fishing it through the other side. It's got a washer on the other side just so I don't pull it through. But it's just pretty basic handle that just goes through there. So I'm just going to put 2 in there, so that should be enough just to be able to pull it down. So just test it out. Yep, it's not breaking or anything. Luckily I did it okay, but it's hardwood obviously, so it's strong. So it was just measuring, just double checking that it's straight before I put the other one on there, make sure I don't need to do any little micro adjustments. And there's the 2 on there, and the bed is done. So I have to still get the mattress for it, but turned out good. It looks nice, saves a lot of room, so it's going to work good for us, especially since we have such a small room there, and it looks nice with the finished oak on it.